for North America, cops are in the news because they are the story. I'm Molly Thomas in Erbil, Iraq. They were telling us about the days just after the attack. The fear levels were just so high. Bloomberg, Fox, New York Times, Politico, they all went with Clinton at least 3 points ahead. Al-Shabaab is still looking to occupy territory just 5 kilometers from that Syrian-Turkish border. That was metric. Of course, it's still electric down here. 1 hectare is the size of a rugby field. Yeah, that storm, it hit hard and it hit strong. Yes. So it just came out in the last hour. And we are watching, of course, that number on the bottom of your screen. Electoral college votes right now sitting at 136 to 104 for Donald Trump. Again, you have to get 270 to seal the deal for the next president of the United States. They're talking about the severity of that storm. So just exactly how strong those winds were, how it felt in the buildings they were in as they were swaying, as they were indoors. You can see in the video just the impact of what that wind looked like. Just keep in mind, John, we're talking about Houston. This is the largest city in Texas. This is the 4th largest city in the USA. It is known as the energy capital of the world. Hundreds of oil fields surrounding that main capital city. This is a massive disaster for people. This is going to be a massive disaster for business, and this is going to affect oil production across North America. This pipeline really from day one has been a big divider between the East and West. You may remember that Quebec was staunchly opposed to it. Western leaders were very upset about that, and it created a huge debate around foreign and domestic oil production. It's not just lost lives, it's people missing, Arthi. So right now, there's families that are trudging through the water, that are going through some of these areas that you see on your screen, trying to find their missing loved ones. Nicaragua, we know rivers are severely swollen. Authorities have said there that the whole country is on alert right now because of landslides, possible mudslides. Right on this side, you can see behind me the Syrian mountains. On the other side, the Turkish mountains. And there's actually a fence-like wall that you can see that divides the two areas. And of course, it's too dangerous for us to go over to Syria right now. But thanks to technology, we're able to connect with people right over that border. Steps away, Syrians are scrambling for safety.
700,000.
700,000 people that have moved
IDPs from Hama, from Idlib, from Aleppo, from all of the area to the Turkish border.
It's an informal safe zone from airstrikes. Because if you cross into Turkish airspace, well, you're in trouble. Somalia has declared a national disaster. What is supposed to be lush green farmland looks like this after 2 failed rainy seasons. People in northern Somalia are largely pastoralists, so they are nomadic and they're caring for cattle and they're constantly on the move. But take a look around me. There's no animals, there are no people, there's nothing out here. And that tells us there's no food or water anywhere in this area. The influx of Iraqi IDPs and Syrian refugees is not just a humanitarian crisis, it's really an economic one. The Kurdistan regional government says it's seen a 28% population boom since 2012. So think of all the people that need medical supplies, food, shelter, even jobs. Now this has more than doubled the poverty rate in the KRI. It's also slowed economic growth by 5%. The government says it needs $1.4 billion this year alone to stabilize that economy. Outside the Kurdistan region of Iraq, the Peshmerga, or Kurdish freedom fighters, are holding off ISIS. Canada has 69 members of the special forces on the ground training these troops. Like many young professionals, Sarah is based in Baghdad. She expected to work in her own dentistry clinic, that is, until she saw the suffering.
When I first came to this camp, it was empty. A day after I came to this camp where it was empty, there was about 10,000 people in this camp.
10,000 in one day?
In one day.
What do you not buy anymore that you used to buy before?
انت هسه شنو ما تشتري قبل جد؟ والله كل It's the same, but not a lot like before.
Do you have to ration your children?
Our correspondent Molly Thomas is back from being in Paris. Molly, tell us about walking the streets there at a time like that.
I would describe it as somber, but at the same time lively. I mean, on the somber side, you can't miss the flowers, the tributes, the pictures that show up at these memorials in District 10 and 11. You walk by, I mean, people, even on their way to work, will just stop and take a moment. But at the same time, when it's lively, I mean, part of French culture is to be out at cafes, it's to have a drink on a patio. People are still out and about. And I think the tough thing about talking about France is that Paris is the tourism capital of the world. And so you have, everybody's there. So it's really tough sometimes when you're out in the streets to figure out who's Parisian and who's not, who's affected and who's not. We look around this camp, I mean, people have set up shops, they've set up businesses.
We hope and pray that the conflict will be over in Syria.
When many people think refugees, they assume that these people are living in refugee camps. But here in Jordan, the majority of Syrian refugees are actually living in host communities like here in Zarqa. Now, the problem with this is that services can be scarce and scattered. The UN says that 2/3 of Syrians living like this are actually in poverty. A 7.0 quake may have rattled the Isle of Hispaniola, but it's the conscientious aftershock that woke up the world. Our first stop, Ghanaïdes, a village 150 kilometers north of Port-au-Prince. And even outside the capital, away from the earthquake's immediate reach, a trail of innocent victims. Orphans from
the quake. Most of them call me Poppy, or father, which is just too much.
Breaks your heart a little bit?
Just a little bit.
Canada reconfirmed Haiti as a focus country this year. However, funding has not been committed yet. Do you think Haiti will always be dependent on countries like Canada? It was quite a sweeping speech, Lorna. Pope Francis addressed more than 100 heads of state in just under 45 minutes. And he had a lot to say to the international community, but at the heart of every single issue that he touched on was this cry for social justice. Nearly 100,000 gathered in the Bugesera district to welcome their presidential candidate in style. And what a reception for the man who changed history in this region. Besides development, massive change. 16 years ago, this was a dumping ground for Tutsi bodies. It's perfectly timed, but not perfectly understood. Now, the goal of this project is to virtually connect over 300 institutions in 30 districts. It's a fast access upgrade, but for residents who aren't necessarily plugged in. Not only Saskatchewan, but the West is a tough political playground for the Liberals. How do you target seniors, your voters, the people that are constantly going to the polls that perhaps may be set in a conservative mindset?
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing is people are a lot less branded to particular parties than they once were.
Let's quickly touch on your abortion stance. I mean, you want your MPs to all vote pro-choice. Mm-hmm. Isn't that impeding on their freedom of thought, their freedom of belief, their freedom of opinion, some of those values that your father brought into the charter? No ban on stolen land! No ban on stolen land! Lorna, as you know, this is the second protest in as many weeks right along the strip. University Avenue, of course, is a heavy police presence right at the U.S. consulate right behind me. You take a look. This is where the protesters are. People that have been here for hours already today. It's quite cold outside and they're still here.
This is Hitler time coming back. Now, before there was the Jews, now it's the Muslim. Donald Trump brought the racism, brought the hate out of everyone's heart. What happened in Quebecois yesterday not just shattered my heart into pieces, made me speechless. I slept in tears yesterday listening to the Quran because I just think that this is going to be my end too.
Wow, Molly. Understandably very emotional and new Canadian.
Mm-hmm. I learned that Nadia, originally from Iraq, when the U.S. invaded their family, actually she lost her sister in that war. The family left, they went to Jordan. Of course, as they weren't nationals, they couldn't
would
get
have been
land.
a very young girl.
Yes, exactly.
When her sister was killed
That's
in
right.
the war.
That's right. So they fled to Jordan. You can't get land if you're not nationals. They eventually immigrated to Canada. Their extended family went to the U.S. And you can imagine the frustration when you finally make it to these lands of freedom and now you can't even see your family.
We have 17 children. It's terrible.
17 children lost their father.
Children.
Mohammed Libidi's quiet neighborhood is lined with tears. The cards in the snow tell a story no one ever wanted to hear. 6 men gunned down at their local place of worship. Another 3 are still in intensive care. This is Canada's first physical attack on people of faith.
This is a rare case. This is not a general feeling.
The attack at Quebec City's Islamic Center has many questioning the province's recent years of struggle with identity politics. You have to remember that Quebec has an interesting relationship with race and religion. Back in 2013, the Parti Québécois proposed a charter of values that would eliminate all religious symbols from public workspaces. And while that did not go through and there is a new government, you have to wonder who still supports this. The alleged shooter, 27-year-old Alexandre Bissonnette, held radicalized right-wing views. He is described by people that knew him as a racist fanatic, known to support U.S. President Donald Trump, France's National Front leader Marine Le Pen, and to have anti-Islamic views. But contempt can be contagious. Since Sunday's attack, Montreal police say there's been a spike in hate-related incidents.
I just want to weep for this man who was just trying to support his family.
It's not what you'd expect from a place like this. There are dark stories spilling out of wine country. They're talking about workers that are falling through the cracks of our healthcare system. And we're asking, who's responsible?